Zimbabwe's first dollar billionaire Strive Masiyiwa is now tied to plans for 5 AI hubs across.
They said Africa couldn't build. They said Africans could only consume, never create. They laughed at the idea of African data centers, African code, African intelligence. Well, now those same voices will have to process their own shock, because the continent they dismissed just declared digital independence. Strive Masiyiwa, a Zimbabwean businessman and philanthropist, isn't begging Silicon Valley for access. He's building Africa's own AI factories. And for those still clinging to the old fantasy of a dependent Africa, this is your warning. The age of permission is over. The age of power has begun. But how is this happening? Let's find out. When Strive Masiyiwa speaks, the boardrooms of London and Silicon Valley usually listen, but this time, they flinched. The Zimbabwean billionaire didn't announce another telecom merger or fintech startup. He declared something far more explosive. 5 artificial intelligence factories across Africa, funded through his company, Cassava Technologies, with an investment of $720 million. The locations? South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, and Morocco. Not Paris, not New York, not Tokyo. Africa. It's a headline that sounds almost unreal to the global establishment, which still views Africa as a digital consumer base, rather than a creator. For decades, the world's servers, supercomputers, and data centers have been concentrated in West and East Asia. The global South, especially Africa, has always been at the end of that chain, forced to rent cloud space, export its data, and then buy back intelligence trained on it. But Masiyiwa's landmark is the first major continent-break move to end that cycle. He's not joining the AI revolution. He's starting an African chapter of it. The first AI factory, already under construction in Johannesburg, South Africa, will reportedly run on 3,000 NVIDIA GPUs, the same advanced processors that train OpenAI's and Google's largest models. To put that in context, these chips are the heartbeat of modern AI. Without them, no neural network, no machine learning, no digital progress. Until now, African AI researchers had to send their data abroad for processing because such power simply didn't exist locally. Now, for the first time, they'll be able to train models on African soil for African needs. But this project isn't about catching up, it's about catching the world off guard. Masiyiwa is building infrastructure, not hype. Each factory will serve as a digital foundry, the place where raw African data becomes refined intelligence. These factories will connect directly to Cassava's massive digital backbone, Africa data centers, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, and Liquid C2, which already span dozens of African nations. This network will ensure that the AI factories aren't isolated fortresses, but connected hubs, capable of powering regional ecosystems in healthcare, agriculture, education, fintech, and logistics. The logic is both economic and strategic. Masiyiwa knows Africa cannot compete in the global AI economy if it keeps renting compute power from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, a system that drains billions annually. The global AI market is projected to surpass $1.3 trillion by 2030, and without local infrastructure, Africa's share would remain microscopic. But with factories like these, the continent could transform its digital dependence into digital dominance. It's not just about technology, it's about ownership. Critics call it ambitious. Supporters call it historic. But Masiyiwa calls it necessary. His sovereign AI cloud vision aims to ensure that Africa controls the servers, the software, and most importantly, the data, the new oil of this century. Once data leaves African borders, it stops being African. With this project, Masiyiwa is drawing a digital border of his own, one that says, the age of outsourcing our intelligence is over. What's even more significant is the timing. The announcement comes as African leaders are demanding reform in global institutions, from the UN to the IMF, and calling for technological sovereignty. Masiyiwa's AI initiative gives that rhetoric teeth. It tells the world that Africa isn't waiting for permission to innovate. It's already building the machines that will define its next century. Still, even with all its potential, this project raises a burning question that will define everything that follows. Why is this so important for Africa's future? And what does it truly mean for a continent that has been kept on the digital sidelines for so long? To understand why Strive Masiyiwa's announcement matters so much, you have to understand how Africa got here. A continent rich in people, talent, and ideas, yet trapped in a digital system that was never built for its benefit. For years, Africa's relationship with technology has resembled that of a tenant renting space in someone else's house. Every app downloaded, every transaction processed, every byte of data stored has been running on someone else's servers, under someone else's laws, and for someone else's profit. This is the silent tax of dependence, the hidden cost Africa has paid for its exclusion from the world's tech infrastructure. When an African researcher trains a model on an American cloud, that data travels thousands of miles and gets processed on machines that Africa doesn't own. The researcher pays high currency conversion fees, faces latency issues, and often loses control over sensitive information. When a fintech startup in Lagos builds a payment system, its cloud costs go straight to foreign corporations. And when African governments collect citizen data for national programs, they often store it abroad, where local sovereignty ends and foreign jurisdiction begins. This dependency is not accidental. It's the direct result of a global system where technology followed capital, not need. For years, Silicon Valley and its Western allies built the digital highways of the world, but they deliberately skipped Africa. The result is that only about 1% of the world's data centers are in Africa, and of those, most are foreign-owned. The continent's brightest minds have been forced to innovate in the shadows of infrastructure they don't control. That's why Masiyiwa's AI factories aren't just data centers, they're acts of rebellion. They confront the uncomfortable truth that Africa's digital growth has been built on borrowed infrastructure. And borrowed power, like borrowed money, comes with interest. That interest is dependence. Dependence on external approval, on international pricing models, and on a system that rewards consumption but punishes creation. The AI era makes this dependence even more dangerous. Artificial intelligence runs on data, the new resource that defines national power. Every country that controls its data pipelines controls its narrative, its economy, and its security. That's why the West guards its tech sector like a fortress, and why China built its entire industrial strategy around owning its digital ecosystem. Africa, for too long, has been the data supplier, not the data owner. When an African hospital scans patient records to train a diagnostic model, it sends that data to a cloud in Virginia or Frankfurt. When a Nigerian agritech company predicts rainfall patterns using AI, it processes its computations on Amazon Web Services. And when African governments sign digital partnerships with Western firms, they often unknowingly grant access to the continent's most valuable asset, its collective intelligence. Masiyiwa saw through this long before others did. His sovereign AI cloud is a response to that silent digital colonialism, a system where Africa's data leaves home, gets refined abroad, and returns as a service Africans must pay for. By building AI factories across 5 major markets, he's flipping that script. Africa will no longer send its data out to be processed. It will process, refine, and commercialize it right here. But this shift isn't just about economics, it's about identity. A continent that cannot host its intelligence cannot own its future. To lead in AI, you need to own your algorithms, your data, and your servers. That's what these factories represent, a digital declaration of independence. Yet the question now shifts from why Africa needs this to what it will take to make it work. Because building AI factories is only the first step. Ensuring that Africa has the energy, people, and policy strength to sustain them is the real test. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. The question now is simple but enormous. How do you turn a $720 million dream into an actual digital revolution? Because it's one thing to declare Africa's technological independence, it's another to build it brick by brick, wire by wire, and code by code. That's where Strive Masiyiwa's strategy becomes truly surgical. He isn't scattering projects randomly across the map. he's constructing what can only be described as Africa's first continental digital nervous system, a network designed to give African economies the same structural backbone that Silicon Valley and Shenzhen take for granted. Each of the 5 AI factories will play a different but interconnected role in that system. South Africa will serve as the anchor hub, leveraging its industrial capacity, advanced fiber networks, and energy infrastructure. Nigeria will become the financial engine, feeding AI integration into fintech, logistics, and manufacturing. Kenya will handle innovation and research, using its rapidly growing startup ecosystem and university network to experiment with localized AI tools. Egypt will provide North African and Middle Eastern connectivity, positioning itself as a bridge between Africa and Asia. And Morocco will act as the gateway to Europe, attracting global partners who want access to African data and markets, but on African terms. That structure reveals Masiyiwa's real genius. This is not about 5 separate factories. It's about building a continental circuit, one where data moves within Africa, innovation circulates within Africa, and profits stay within Africa. Cassava Technologies' existing portfolio makes this possible. Through Liquid Intelligent Technologies, the company already manages one of the largest fiber optic networks in Africa, stretching over 110,000 kilometers. That network will act as the veins through which Africa's AI blood flows, connecting cities, startups, and institutions directly to these AI hubs. Behind that infrastructure is another key pillar: Africa Data Centers, the company's storage arm. These facilities already handle cloud storage for governments and major corporations. Now, they'll expand to accommodate the immense computing power AI models demand. Cassava has also been building Liquid C2, a cybersecurity and cloud solutions company, to ensure the system is not only efficient but secure. Because, make no mistake, when you start processing valuable African data locally, you also start painting a target on your back. Cybersecurity in this context becomes not just a technical issue, but a matter of national defense. Masiyiwa's plan is designed to anticipate that. Each AI factory will have layered digital protection, using both hardware encryption and AI-driven threat detection systems. These are not just computer centers, they are digital fortresses designed to safeguard Africa's most valuable resource: information. But what truly makes this project revolutionary is how it blends infrastructure with vision. It's not just about cables and servers, it's about rewriting Africa's participation in global tech. Cassava's AI network will allow African universities to collaborate directly with industries and governments to deploy AI governance systems, and small businesses to access computer resources that were once locked behind foreign paywalls. A farmer in Ghana could use AI for crop analytics without ever touching a US server. A hospital in Tanzania could process medical scans using models trained within the continent. A startup in Rwanda could launch an AI product that never leaves African data boundaries. And yet, every revolution has its scaffolding, the foundation that must hold under pressure. For this AI ecosystem to survive, it requires stability, energy, regulation, and skilled minds to run it. Masiyiwa may be building the bones, but the lifeblood must come from the continent's governments and its people. So the next challenge is clear. How can Africa sustain this massive technological leap without crumbling under its own weight? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. So far, the ambition looks unstoppable, a continent wiring itself into the future, one AI factory at a time. But as every architect of revolutions knows, vision collapses without infrastructure. The digital empire Masiyiwa is building depends on 3 silent pillars: energy, human capital, and policy coordination. Without them, the 5 AI factories will remain islands of brilliance, surrounded by an ocean of instability. To sustain this dream, Africa must now confront the physical, intellectual, and political challenges that stand between aspiration and execution. Let's start with energy, the most basic yet most unforgiving barrier. Artificial intelligence runs on electricity, not in poetic terms, but in megawatts. Each high-performance GPU consumes enormous power, and when you're running thousands of them around the clock, energy stability becomes a matter of survival. Yet across Africa, blackouts are still a daily reality. South Africa's Eskom load shedding, Nigeria's generator economy, Kenya's hydro dependency, and Egypt's rising energy demands all tell the same story. AI cannot thrive on flickering lights. Cassava Technologies knows this. That's why its strategy involves integrating renewable microgrids and clean energy partnerships into the AI factory blueprint. In South Africa, solar-driven backup systems are being developed alongside local power providers. In Kenya and Nigeria, Cassava is exploring hybrid models combining solar, wind, and gas to maintain consistent loads for its data centers. The move isn't just environmentally smart, it's economically necessary. With the global AI boom driving up GPU energy demand, countries that can generate reliable, cheap, and clean power will hold the upper hand. Africa, with its sunlight and natural gas reserves, could lead that race if it gets its policies right. But power doesn't just come from electricity, it comes from people. And here lies the second front, the talent gap. AI factories can't run themselves. They require a rare breed of engineers, data scientists, cybersecurity experts, and systems architects. For too long, Africa's brightest minds have been exported, trained in Lagos or Cairo, and refined in London or Boston. Masayiwa's project creates a reason to reverse that flow. However, reversing it will take deliberate effort. This means universities must evolve from academic silos into innovation engines. AI needs hands-on skills, not just theoretical knowledge. That's why Cassava has already begun collaborating with institutions across Kenya, Nigeria, and Egypt to develop specialized AI curricula aligned with its infrastructure rollout. The company is also offering training scholarships and cloud credits to African startups, a move designed to seed a new generation of homegrown innovators who can use these factories as their laboratories. The hope is that within a decade, Africa won't just host AI infrastructure, it will export AI expertise. The third pillar is policy coordination, arguably the most delicate of all. 5 countries, 5 legal systems, 5 sets of regulations. That's the complexity Cassava must navigate. Data localization laws differ wildly from one African state to another. Cross-border data movement is often hindered by outdated trade frameworks. Without harmonization, the dream of a connected AI network could drown in bureaucracy. This is where the African Union must step in. A continent-wide digital sovereignty charter could set unified standards for data protection, AI ethics, and digital infrastructure governance. The African Continental Free Trade Area has already laid the economic groundwork for such integration. What's needed now is digital synchronization, a shared protocol that ensures AI developed in Nairobi can safely interact with systems in Lagos or Cairo without legal deadlocks or data insecurity. Masayiwa's AI factories could become the backbone for this integration, but only if governments act fast enough to match the pace of technological change. Africa has often been late to industrial revolutions. This time, the opportunity is alive and the window is small. Because in the end, infrastructure and ambition will only take Africa so far. The question that now looms over this entire enterprise is perhaps the most critical of all. If these factories succeed, how will they redefine Africa's identity, not as a user of global systems, but as an architect of the next one? When a continent begins to master its tools, the world starts to take notice. Africa, long cast as the testing ground for other people's technology, is finally scripting its own technological destiny. The 5 AI factories that Strive Masayiwa is building are not just a local success story. They are a geopolitical statement. For centuries, Africa's story was defined by extraction, its minerals, its labor, its ideas all siphoned outward. But with artificial intelligence, for the first time in modern history, Africa holds a resource that cannot be physically stolen: its data, its context, and its collective intelligence. Once African AI infrastructure becomes fully functional, the continent will no longer export raw data for foreign firms to monetize. Instead, it will export finished intelligence models, applications, and solutions built for African realities, but valuable everywhere. Consider what happens when African-trained AI systems begin to outperform Western ones in sectors that the global North has long ignored. In agriculture, for instance, machine learning models tailored to African weather patterns could help stabilize food security for hundreds of millions. In education, adaptive AI tutors that speak Hausa, Zulu, and Amharic could revolutionize literacy. In medicine, where diagnostic algorithms trained on African genomic data could lead to breakthroughs in global health research. The rest of the world will start looking to Africa, not out of pity or charity, but out of necessity. That's the quiet power Masiyiwa's vision is building. It's not the loud politics of speeches and summits, it's the silent geopolitics of infrastructure. Whoever owns the servers owns the story. And by 2026, when cassava's factories are fully operational, Africa will own a part of that story for the first time. But this ownership also comes with a moral responsibility. Africa cannot simply replicate the exploitative patterns of the West, data monopolies, algorithmic bias, and profit-first AI models that widen inequality. If the continent is to truly lead, it must pioneer a different philosophy of technology, human-centered intelligence. Masiyiwa's initiative provides the infrastructure, but the ethical architecture must come from African thinkers, governments, and innovators. This means creating an AI ecosystem guided not by quarterly earnings, but by collective progress, where inclusion, culture, and community drive design. Already there are signs of that shift. Across the continent, AI startups are emerging that focus on solving African problems with African logic, not copying Western apps, but reimagining how technology can coexist with tradition. In Rwanda, AI is helping optimize irrigation for rural farmers. In Senegal, natural language models are preserving local dialects. In Botswana, health data analysis is detecting outbreaks faster than ever before. These are not side projects. They are the blueprint of what's to come once Africa gains the computing muscle to scale its ideas continent-wide. Globally, this rise will recalibrate alliances. Tech giants that once dictated terms to African governments will find themselves negotiating for access instead. The European Union and the United States, worried about data privacy and digital competition, will now see Africa as a partner with leverage. Meanwhile, China, long the dominant player in African infrastructure, will encounter a new, self-sufficient continent that doesn't merely buy servers, but builds them. That's why this project is about more than AI. It's about reclaiming narrative control, transforming Africa from a symbol of underdevelopment into a symbol of digital resilience. Each AI factory represents more than hardware. It's a vote of confidence in the idea that Africa can define intelligence on its own terms. And when that day arrives, when a young researcher in Nairobi builds an algorithm that the world wants to license, when a Pan-African cloud hosts data that powers both innovation and protection, then the world will finally see what Masiyiwa already does, that Africa's greatest export is not its resources, but its mind. The continent that was once mined for gold is now mining for genius. And this time, the gold doesn't leave, it grows. Because what began as 5 factories is becoming something much larger, a new kind of revolution, not fought with weapons or protest, but with code, computers, and confidence. The future, for once, will have an African accent. Do you believe Africa is finally taking control of its own digital destiny? Let us know in the comments section. Can Strive Masiyiwa's AI revolution truly make the continent independent from Western tech powers? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.